You know that moment when you're at a party, surrounded by people laughing, talking, and connecting, and you just feel nothing, like you're watching the world through a thick pane of glass, exhausted before you even said hello. I used to think that feeling was a flaw, that being a loner or someone who didn't fit into the loud, chaotic social circles of the world meant I was broken. But what if that disconnect isn't a bug? What if it's a feature? If you look at history, some of the most rigid, secretive, and powerful social structures weren't built by the loudest people in the room. They were built by the ones who understood the quiet power of the disconnected self. Today, we're going to look at the structure of a mafia crew, from the lowliest associate to the maid member, not as a crime story, but as a psychological study in selective belonging. Because the way they protect their family looks a lot like the way you protect your peace. Let's break down the hierarchy of the silent. In the world of the crew, you start as an associate. You're on the outside looking in, you're with them, but you aren't of them. Psychologically, this is where most of us start when we enter a new social environment. But for the person who feels disconnected, being an associate isn't just about doing work, it's about deep processing. Science shows that some people have brains that literally process more information per interaction, while everyone else is just having a conversation. You're playing social chess, analyzing tone, reading micro-expressions, and predicting outcomes 3 moves ahead. This is the life of an associate. You are an emotional antenna, picking up signals most people don't even know exist. In a crew, this overthinking is actually survival. Your ancestors, the ones who noticed the rustling in the bushes before everyone else, they were the ones who survived. When you're an associate, your walls aren't paranoia, they're pattern recognition. You're watching for the friend who only calls when they need something, or the family member whose compliments come with conditions. You aren't refusing to let people in. You're just not letting the wrong people in easily. You're doing the work of discerning. You understand that it takes roughly 200 hours of quality time to form a real connection. So, you wait, you observe, you process. Once you've proven you can handle the data, you move toward becoming a maid member or a soldier. This is the ultimate quality over quantity move. In a world that tells you that you need 200 acquaintances, the crew tells you that you only need 3 real ones. The Harvard Grant study, the longest study on human happiness, found that it's not the number of relationships that predicts well-being, it's the depth. When a member is made, they are opting out of the 24/7 performance stage of general society. They don't need the world to see them. They have a high privacy orientation. Think about it. Why don't these people post their work or their family photos on social media? It's because their identity isn't built on what people think. They have what psychologists call secure self-esteem. It stands on its own without needing the mirror of a like button to reflect back who they are. To be a soldier is to have an internal locus of evaluation. You judge yourself by your own standards, or the standards of your inner circle, not the world's. You've stopped asking, "Am I enough?" and started trusting what is already inside you. You've built a sanctuary, not an isolation ward. A capo manages a crew. They are the ones who decide who gets access and who gets cut off. This is where we see the difference between a wall and a boundary. Walls block everyone, the good and the bad, usually because of fear. But boundaries are selective. They are built from self-awareness. A capo's job is to protect the energy of the group like it's a finite resource, because it is. Sometimes the most quietly fierce thing a person can do is cut someone off. Society calls this being antisocial or cold. But for someone who has been drained too many times, the brain flips a switch. what Dr. Stephen Porges calls the dorsal vagal response. It's a shutdown mode designed for protection. If you've ever looked at your phone, saw a name and decided, "Not today," that wasn't weakness. That was your nervous system doing its job. You weren't running away from something, you were running toward peace. The capo understands that being surrounded by the wrong people is just as damaging as being alone. They choose solitude over forced connection. Solitude is the presence of peace you chose. Loneliness is just the absence of connection you want. At the top of the structure is the boss. In our psychological framework, the boss is the person who has achieved true self-sufficiency. People often read self-sufficiency as arrogance or distance, but psychologists at Stanford found that some people are simply wired to generate their own sense of stability. They don't need external validation to feel okay. They already feel complete. The boss doesn't treat their birthday like a milestone that requires 30 people singing off-key in a restaurant. They've stepped off the hedonic treadmill, that cycle where you chase the next external hit of happiness. They've figured out how to feel whole on a random Tuesday. This level of maturity often comes from learned helplessness or past disappointments. Maybe life taught them early on that hoping for a big celebration or a big crowd only led to a prediction error, a gap between what they expected and what they got. To protect themselves, their brain stopped predicting the reward. But here's the twist: that scar tissue eventually becomes armor. When you no longer need a birthday or a public image to feel valued, you become incredibly hard to manipulate. You value privacy over performance. You've broken the wheel of social comparison. But we have to be honest. There is a thin line between protecting your energy and hiding in a prison you built yourself. For many in this quiet tribe, the choice to stay disconnected comes from trust wounds. Somewhere along the way, you learned that people leave or that closeness comes with a cost. Your brain relives those painful dates every year, what researchers call the anniversary effect. Are you avoiding the world because you're free or because you're afraid? Are you choosing privacy or are you avoiding visibility because of old wounds? The Mafia structure is a family built on the idea that the world is a threat. It's a response to a lack of safety. But the goal of the disconnected self shouldn't be to stay hidden forever. It should be to find the right ones. The 75-year Harvard study found one thing: it's about having the right people, even if that circle is small. If your circle is just 2 or 3 real friends, you aren't failing at friendship, you're just discerning. So, whether you're an associate still trying to read the room or a boss who has found peace in the silence, I want you to hear this. You are not broken. You're not antisocial. You're not too much or too little. You're just wired for depth in a world that rewards the surface. You don't have to force friendships that drain you. You don't have to post photos to prove you exist. You don't have to blow out candles to know your own worth. In a world that rewards the loudest voice, staying in a quiet room is one of the quietly fiercest things a person can do. You've earned your peace the hard way. Protect it. If this looked like the structure of your own life, leave a comment. Tell me when you first realized that your quietness was actually your strength. And if you want more conversations for people like us, subscribe. The right people, the ones who get it, they're worth the wait.